Have you ever received an email that made your blood run cold? Not spam, not a scam, but something so impossible, so terrifying, that it shattered everything you thought you knew about reality? My name is Sarah, and 3 weeks ago, I received an email from myself. Not just any email, one sent from 10 years in the future. And if you think that's impossible, wait until you hear what it said. By the end of this story, you'll be checking your own inbox with trembling fingers, wondering if somewhere in the digital void, a future version of yourself is trying to send you a warning. But before we dive into this nightmare, hit that subscribe button, because trust me, you'll want to follow this journey to its terrifying conclusion. And please, whatever happens, don't turn off your phone while listening to this. You'll understand why later. It was 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday when my life changed forever. I was hunched over my laptop in my cramped Chicago apartment, the blue glow of the screen burning my tired eyes. Another late night of freelance graphic design work, because rent doesn't pay itself, and my regular job barely covered groceries. The apartment was dead silent except for the hum of my ancient laptop fan and the occasional creak of the building settling. My boyfriend Mike had been asleep for hours, and even the usually noisy neighbors had finally quieted down. It was just me, the darkness, and the hypnotic cursor blinking on my screen. I was deep in Photoshop, tweaking a logo for a local coffee shop when the email notification chimed. That distinctive ding that usually meant another client request or, more likely at this hour, spam. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something made me click over to my Gmail tab. Maybe it was the caffeine crash making me restless, or maybe it was something deeper, that primal instinct that tells you when something's wrong. The email sat at the top of my inbox like a digital landmine, from sarah.chen.designedgemail.com. sarah.chen.designedgemail.com. Subject: You need to read this now. Sarah, 2034. Received March 15th, 2034, 3:15 a.m. I stared at the screen, my coffee growing cold in my hands. The sender was my own email address. The date was impossible, 10 years in the future. But what made my skin crawl wasn't the impossible timestamp. It was the subject line, the urgency, the way my own name stared back at me like an accusation. My first thought was hacker. Someone had gained access to my account and was playing an elaborate prank. But as I hovered my mouse over the email, studying the details, doubt began to creep in. The timestamp wasn't just future dated, it was precise. 3:15 a.m., 37 minutes from now. Who would choose such a specific time? I checked my sent folder. Nothing. Searched for any emails with that subject line. Nothing. Ran a quick virus scan on my laptop. Clean. My hands were shaking slightly as I double-clicked the email. But here's where it gets truly terrifying and where you need to ask yourself, what would you do? Would you open an email from yourself, from the future? Would you dismiss it as impossible, or would that tiny voice in the back of your head whisper, what if? The email opened, and the first line made my heart stop. Sarah, I know you're reading this at 2:48 a.m. on March 15th, 2024, sitting in your kitchen, wearing your old NYU sweatshirt with the coffee stain on the left sleeve. I looked down. NYU sweatshirt, coffee stain on the left sleeve, exactly where I said it would be. The email continued. You're going to think this is a prank. You're going to check your sent folder, run a virus scan, maybe even call Mike over to look at it. Don't, not yet. Keep reading. Your life depends on it. What would you do in that moment? When faced with the impossible, when every logical explanation crumbled away, would you keep reading? Or would you slam the laptop shut and pretend it never happened? I kept reading. And that decision changed everything. The cursor blinked at the end of that first paragraph, and I realized I had stopped breathing. The specificity was impossible. The coffee stain had happened 3 days ago when I'd bumped into my desk during a video call. I hadn't mentioned it to anyone, hadn't posted about it online. It was just a stupid little detail of my mundane life. But somehow, impossibly, I knew about it. With trembling fingers, I scrolled down to read the rest of the email. Sarah, I need you to understand that what I'm about to tell you is real. I am you, writing from March 15th, 2034. I know how insane that sounds. I know you're looking for rational explanations right now. But I need you to put that aside and listen. Because in exactly 72 hours, something terrible is going to happen. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in the silence of my apartment. 72 hours. That would be Friday, March 18th. The email continued. On Friday at 4:22 p.m., you will receive a text from your sister Jennifer asking if you want to grab coffee at that new place on State Street, Grind Coffee Co. You'll say yes because you've been meaning to try it, and because Jenny has been stressed about her job interviews. I paused. My sister Jennifer was indeed job hunting. She'd been talking about wanting to try new coffee places around downtown. But this was too specific, too exact. You'll meet her there at 5:30 p.m. You'll both order your usual. She'll get a vanilla latte. You'll get a cold brew with oat milk. You'll sit at the table by the window, the one with the wobbly leg that rocks when you lean on it. The detail was suffocating in its precision. It felt like someone had crawled inside my brain and mapped out my future decisions. At exactly 6:07 p.m., while you're laughing at Jenny's story about her disastrous Zoom interview, a delivery truck will lose control on State Street. The driver will be texting his girlfriend, distracted for just 3 seconds. The truck will mount the sidewalk and crash through the front window of Grind Coffee Co. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely scroll. Jennifer will die instantly. You'll survive with minor injuries. But the guilt will destroy you. You'll blame yourself for choosing that table, for not sitting somewhere safer, for not somehow seeing it coming. You'll spiral into depression, lose your freelance clients, break up with Mike. Within 6 months, you'll attempt suicide. I slammed the laptop shut so hard the sound echoed through my apartment like a gunshot. Silence, then heavy breathing sounds. I sat there in the dark, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was insane. It had to be some kind of sick joke. But who would know about Jenny's job interviews? Who would know my exact coffee order, down to the oat milk? I opened the laptop again. The email was still there, waiting. There was more. I know you just closed the laptop. I know you're telling yourself this is impossible. But Sarah, I need you to check something. Go to your browser history and look at what you searched for last Tuesday night when you couldn't sleep. With numb fingers, I opened Chrome and checked my history. Last Tuesday, 3:17 a.m. Can you really love someone if you've never been truly alone? It was a random philosophical search I'd done during one of my insomnia spirals. I hadn't told anyone about it. It wasn't in any saved documents or social media posts. It was just a fleeting moment of late-night vulnerability. But I knew. The email continued. You searched for that because Mike had fallen asleep during our movie night, and you felt lonely even though he was right there. You wondered if your feelings were real or just fear of being alone. You almost woke him up to talk about it, but you didn't want to seem needy. Every word was a bullseye to my soul. Sarah, I'm not a hacker. I'm not a prank. I am you, and I'm trying to save our sister's life. Check the email metadata. Check the sender authentication. Run every test you want. But while you're doing that, remember that we only have 71 hours left. I right-clicked on the email, examined every detail of the headers and routing information. The metadata showed routing through servers that didn't exist, timestamps that defied physics, authentication keys that made no sense. Sound of phone notification. My phone buzzed with a notification. A new email. From Sarah.Chen, designagemail.com. Subject. Second warning. The clock is ticking. My blood turned to ice water. The second email was shorter, but somehow more terrifying. You checked the metadata. Good. You're starting to believe, aren't you? I can feel it. That cold recognition spreading through your chest. The same feeling I had when I first received these emails from my future self. Yes, Sarah. This is a loop, a horrible, endless loop, but we can break it. We have to break it. Stared at the words, my mind reeling. A loop? What did that mean? The email continued. Right now, you're wondering if you're having a breakdown. If the stress of freelancing, the late nights, the constant worry about money has finally snapped something in your brain. At 2:52 a.m., you're going to get up and splash cold water on your face. You'll stare at yourself in the bathroom mirror and notice that your left eye has a small twitch. It started 3 days ago from too much screen time. I looked at the clock. 2:51 a.m. My reflection in the laptop screen showed the slight tremor in my left eyelid that had been bothering me for days. Don't go to the bathroom yet. Keep reading, because I need to tell you about the others. Others? This isn't the first time I've sent these emails. I've been trying for, God, I don't even know how long. Dozens of loops, hundreds maybe. Each time I watch Jennifer die. Each time I try to warn our past self. Each time something goes wrong. The room felt like it was closing in on me. The familiar sounds of my apartment, the fridge humming, the heat clicking on, suddenly seemed loud and threatening. In loop 23, you believed the emails but chose the wrong day to warn Jennifer. She thought you were having a breakdown and had you committed. She went to the coffee shop alone. Same truck, same time, same result. In loop 47, you managed to convince Jennifer to avoid State Street entirely, but the truck hit a school bus instead. 17 children died. The guilt was worse than losing Jennifer. In loop 86, you called in a bomb threat to evacuate the entire block. You were arrested. Jennifer still went to get coffee, at a different place that the truck hit when it swerved to avoid the evacuation area. Each scenario was a punch to the gut. A catalog of failures, of unintended consequences, of a universe that seemed determined to extract its pound of flesh. I've tried everything, Sarah. I've tried stopping the driver. He dies in the crash too, and his 3-year-old daughter grows up without a father. I've tried warning the coffee shop. They evacuate, but the truck hits a bus stop full of people instead. I've tried calling the police, the fire department, the news. Nothing works. My hands were cramping from gripping the laptop so tightly, but this time is different. This time, I think I know what has to happen. And Sarah, you're not going to like it. The screen flickered. For just a moment, I could swear I saw my own face staring back at me from the black reflection, but older, haggard, with eyes that had seen too much. Sound distortion, brief electronic screech, another email notification from Sarah.Chen, designagmail.com, subject, Emergency, they're watching now. The timestamp was 3:15 a.m., the exact time from the first email, but my clock still showed 2:53 a.m. I opened the email with shaking hands. They know I'm contacting you. The warnings are getting stronger. Your laptop screen just flickered. That's them trying to cut the connection. They don't want this loop to break. They feed on it. Sarah, listen carefully. At 3:00 a.m., Mike is going to wake up and ask if you're okay. Tell him you're just working. Late. Do not mention the emails. If you tell anyone about this before the right time, they'll intervene more directly. Trust me, I've seen what happens when they get involved. Who were they, and what did she mean by intervene more directly? The email continued. Check your reflection in the laptop screen. Look carefully at your eyes. I tilted the screen until I could see myself in the dark reflection. My face stared back, pale and frightened. But there was something else. In the darkness behind my reflection, barely visible, was another shape. Another face. It looked like me, but older. Sadder. And it was shaking its head slowly, as if warning me about something. Sarah? Mike's voice drifted from the bedroom, thick with sleep. You okay out there? I glanced at the clock. 3 a.m. exactly. The laptop screen flickered again, and for a split second, all the emails disappeared. The Gmail interface showed an empty inbox, as if none of this had ever happened. Then everything snapped back to normal. But in that moment of digital blackout, I heard something that made my blood freeze. A whisper, so faint it might have been. My imagination. Don't trust her. She's not trying to save Jennifer. She's trying to save herself. Just working late, babe, I called back to Mike, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Go back to sleep. I heard him shuffle back to bed, the springs creaking as he settled in. Within minutes, his soft snoring resumed. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed in those few seconds when the screen went black. The apartment felt different now, like it was holding its breath. I turned back to the laptop, and there was another email waiting. Good. You handled that perfectly. Mike suspects nothing, and that's crucial for now. But Sarah, we need to talk about what happens next. You're going to want to test the predictions. You're going to want proof that this is real. The accuracy was becoming less surprising and more terrifying. How could I know exactly what I was thinking? Tomorrow morning at 9:17 a.m., your upstairs neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, will drop a ceramic coffee mug in her kitchen. You'll hear it shatter. At 10:33 a.m., you'll get a spam call from someone claiming to be from Medicare. You'll let it go to voicemail. At 11:45 a.m., a red Honda Civic will backfire on the street outside your window, and you'll jump because you'll be thinking about these emails. I screenshotted the email, noting the timestamp. These weren't vague predictions. They were specific, testable, and less than 12 hours away. But Sarah, here's what you need to understand. Every time you test these predictions, every time you prove to yourself that this is real, you're also alerting them to our communication. They'll start to interfere more directly. There was that word again, them. Who were they? The email continued. I wish I could explain everything right now, but the connection is unstable. What I can tell you is this. The accident that kills Jennifer isn't random. It's designed. And the more you believe in these emails, the more they'll try to stop you from preventing it. My laptop fan suddenly kicked into overdrive, even though I wasn't running any intensive programs. The screen brightness flickered, and for a moment I could see faint text appearing and disappearing in the background of the Gmail interface. Words like stop and discontinue and violation. They're trying to interfere now. This email might cut out at any moment. But Sarah, I need you to do something. At 8:30 a.m. tomorrow, call your friend Jessica. Ask her about her cat. Trust me on this. Jessica, I hadn't talked to Jessica in months, and I didn't even know she had a cat. The prediction about Mrs. Patterson's mug, that will happen. You'll believe then. But when you do, when you truly accept that this is real, everything changes. The real nightmare begins. The screen flickered violently, and several lines of the email became corrupted, showing as random symbols and characters. I quickly took another screenshot before it could disappear entirely. One more thing, Sarah. Check your browser bookmarks. Look for one that you don't remember creating. I opened my bookmarks menu and scrolled through the familiar list. News sites, design resources, online stores, social media. And there, near the bottom, was a bookmark I'd never seen before. Loop tracking, Sarah's attempts. The URL was a string of random characters that made no sense. But when I clicked on it, my browser opened to a password-protected site that looked like some kind of database. The header read, Temporal Communication Logs, User, Chen, Current Loop, 127. 127 loops. I tried various passwords, my birthday, my pet's name, my social security number. Nothing worked, but then I noticed a hint text below the password field. What did you search for last Tuesday at 3:17 a.m.? With trembling fingers I typed, Can you really love someone if you've never been truly alone? The site unlocked. What I saw made my stomach drop. It was a detailed log of attempts, dozens and dozens of entries, each with dates, times, methods, tried, and outcomes. Every entry ended the same way. Failed, Chen deceased, loop reset. The most recent entry was from yesterday, or tomorrow depending on how you looked at it. Loop 126, attempted mass evacuation via emergency services. Result, truck diverted to Madison Street bus stop. 23 casualties including Chen, who was walking past during evacuation. Reset initiated, and below that, a new entry was appearing in real time. Loop 127, email contact established. Subject showing signs of belief. Warning, interference detected. They are aware. My phone buzzed with a text message, but when I looked at the screen, my blood turned to ice. The text was from my own number. Stop reading the emails. This is your only warning. But I was sitting right here. I hadn't sent any text. I looked back at the laptop screen. All the emails had vanished again. My Gmail inbox showed nothing but the usual spam and newsletters. The bookmarks menu was back to normal. No trace of the loop tracking site, but I had the screenshots. Proof that this was real. 4 a.m. In 5.5 hours, I would know. For certain. Mrs. Patterson would drop her mug. Or she wouldn't. The spam call would come, or it wouldn't. But as I sat there in the pre-dawn darkness, I realized I was no longer hoping the predictions would be wrong. I was hoping they'd be right. Because if they were wrong, it meant I was losing my mind. And if they were right, it meant something impossible was happening, and my sister's life hung in the balance. Either way, my normal life was over. I didn't sleep. How could I? Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, laptop closed, staring at my phone and waiting. Mike had gotten up at 7:30, kissed me goodbye, and headed off to his job at the accounting firm. He'd asked if I was feeling okay. Apparently, I looked pale and stressed. I told him it was just a difficult client project. The lie came so easily. That should have been my first warning. At 8:30 a.m. exactly, I called Jessica. Sarah? Oh my. God, it's been forever. How are you? Her voice was bright and cheerful, exactly as I remembered. I'm good, Jess. Hey, this might sound random, but how's your cat? There was a pause. My cat? Sarah, I don't have a... Oh, wait. Are you talking about midnight? How did you know about midnight? My heart started hammering. What do you mean? I literally just adopted him yesterday from the shelter. I haven't told anyone yet except my mom. I was planning to post photos later today. How did you possibly know? I made up some excuse about seeing something on social media, but my hands were shaking as I hung up. Another impossible prediction, proven true, sound of ceramic breaking from upstairs. At 9:17 a.m., Mrs. Patterson dropped her mug. At 10:33 a.m., Medicare spam called. At 11:45 a.m., the red Honda backfired, and I jumped so hard I nearly fell off my chair. Every prediction, every detail, all exactly as foretold. I opened my laptop with trembling hands. The emails were back, waiting for me. You believe now. I can feel it, that cold certainty settling in your bones. The same feeling I had when I first accepted the truth. But, Sarah, believing is just the beginning. Now we have to act. My reflection in the laptop screen looked haggard, older than my 27 years. The face staring back at me could have been the mysterious figure I'd glimpsed in the darkness the night before. In 47 hours, Jennifer dies. We can prevent it, but only if you're willing to do something that will seem insane to everyone around you. Are you ready to hear what has to happen? I typed a response in reply. Tell me. The response came instantly, as if my future self had been waiting. You need to get Jennifer out of Chicago. Today. Before she even gets the idea to text you about coffee. But Sarah, she won't believe you. She'll think you're having a breakdown. You'll have to make her believe through other means. Other means? What did that mean? Call her now. Tell her you had a dream about her dying in an accident. Tell her you're scared and you need her to visit Mom and Dad in Springfield this weekend. She'll resist. She has that job interview on Monday she needs to prepare for. But you have to convince her. I hesitated. This felt like crossing a line, like stepping into a reality where impossible things were not only possible but necessary. Sarah, I can see you hesitating. I remember this moment. I remember thinking that maybe I could find another way, a less drastic solution. But I've tried everything else. In 126 loops, this is the only approach we haven't tested. 126 failed attempts. 126 times Jennifer had died. I picked up my phone and called my sister. Sarah, what's up? It's early for you to be calling. Jennifer's voice was warm and familiar, and it made my chest tight with an emotion I couldn't name. Jen, I need you to do something for me. I need you to go visit Mom and Dad this weekend. This weekend? I can't. I have that interview Monday and I really need to. Please. The word came out more desperate than I intended. I had this dream, this horrible dream about you getting hurt, and I know it sounds stupid, but I need to know you're safe." There was a pause. "Sarah, are you okay? You sound really strange." "I'm fine. Please, Jen. Just humor me. Drive down to Springfield tonight. Stay the weekend. Tell them it's a surprise visit." "A dream?" "Sarah, come on. I'm 25 years old. I can't just—" "What if I told you that tomorrow at 4:22 p.m. you're going to get a sudden craving for coffee, and you'll text me about trying that new place on State Street?" Another pause. Longer this time. "How could you possibly know what I'm going to want to do tomorrow?" My mouth was dry. "Because I also dreamed that you'd order a vanilla latte and I'd get a cold brew with oat milk, and we'd sit at the table by the window, the one with the wobbly leg." "Sarah, that's weirdly specific. How would you know I like vanilla lattes? I never order those when we're together because you always make fun of my basic drink choices." She was right. I always gave her grief about her predictable coffee orders, but somehow I knew exactly what she'd choose. "Just trust me, please. Something bad is going to happen if you stay in the city this weekend." "Okay, you're really starting to scare me. Are you having some kind of breakdown? Should I come over?" No, don't come over. Just go to Mom and Dad's. Promise me." "Sarah, I really think I should—" The line went dead. I looked at my phone. Full signal, plenty of battery. But the call had just ended. A new email was waiting. She hung up because they cut the connection. They don't want her to leave the city. "But Sarah, we can't give up. You need to go to her apartment. You need to physically take her out of Chicago." Go to her apartment? That was a 40-minute drive, and Jennifer lived in a secure building. She'd never just leave with me, especially not after that phone call. "She's going to think you've lost your mind. She might even call Mike or your parents or try to have you hospitalized. But Sarah, you have to understand, her thinking you're crazy is better than her being dead." My laptop screen flickered, and I saw something that made my heart stop. For just a moment, overlaid on the email, was a video feed. It showed Jennifer's apartment building from across the street, and there, walking toward the entrance, was a delivery truck, the same red and white delivery truck from my dreams, the one that would kill her tomorrow. But it was there today. A day early, I grabbed my keys and ran for the door, the laptop still open behind me, displaying one final message. "They're accelerating the timeline. You have 30 minutes to reach her before they make their move. And Sarah, when you get there, don't trust what you see. They're very good at making nightmares look real." As I raced down the stairs, I could hear my phone buzzing with notifications. Text after text from my own number. "Turn around. Go home. Let it happen. She was always meant to die. You can't fight destiny. Stop running." But I kept running, because somewhere in the city, my sister was in danger, and I was the only one who could save her, even if it meant losing everything else. I broke every speed limit getting to Jennifer's apartment in Lincoln Park. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white, and my phone kept buzzing with those impossible text messages from my own number. I'd stopped reading them after the 15th one, each message more threatening than the last. "Turn around, Sarah. You're making it worse. Some things can't be changed. The loop must continue. Jennifer's death feeds the cycle. Without it, we all cease to exist." That last message made me slam on the brakes so hard the car behind me honked aggressively. We all cease to exist? What did that mean? Car door slamming, footsteps running on pavement. Jennifer's building was a converted warehouse in a trendy part of the city. I'd helped her move in 2 years ago, back when she'd gotten her first real job out of college. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was racing to save her from a future that might not even exist. I buzzed her apartment. No answer. I tried calling her, straight to voicemail. When an elderly resident came out walking his dog, I slipped inside, before the door could close. I knew I was crossing lines, trespassing, potentially scaring my sister, acting like someone who'd lost their grip on reality. But the alternative was letting her die. Jennifer lived on the 4th floor, no elevator. I took the stairs 3 at a time, my heart hammering from both exertion and terror. What if I was too late? What if the truck had already... I reached her. Floor, and pounded on apartment 4B. Jen! Jennifer! Open up! It's Sarah! Silence. I kept knocking until the door across the hall opened and a man in his 30s peered out, looking annoyed. She left about 20 minutes ago, he said. Had a big suitcase with her. Said she was going out of town for the weekend. Heart stopped. She left? Are you sure? Yeah, I helped her carry the suitcase down. Heavy thing. She seemed upset about something. Kept checking her phone like she was expecting bad news. She'd listened to me. Somehow, despite the phone cutting out, despite thinking I was having a breakdown, Jennifer had packed up and left the city. I felt a surge of relief so powerful it made me dizzy. But my relief was short-lived. My phone was buzzing again, but this time it wasn't text messages. It was a call from Jennifer's number. Jen, where are you? Are you okay? Sarah. The voice was Jennifer's, but something was wrong with it. It sounded distant, hollow. I need you to come get me. What? Where are you? I thought you went to Mom and Dad's. I'm at Grind Coffee Co. on State Street, the place we were supposed to go tomorrow. I'm here now, and Sarah, something's wrong. Something's very wrong. The blood drained from my face. Jen, get out of there, right now, leave immediately. I can't, the door won't open. And Sarah, there are other people here. They look like you. The line crackled with static. Sarah, they're all you. Different ages, different versions. They're sitting at every table, all staring at me. They all have your face, but their eyes are wrong. Jennifer, listen to me very carefully. Get away from the windows. Find a back exit. Do whatever you have to do to... It's too late. Jennifer's voice was fading, becoming distant. I can see the truck. It's coming down State Street, and the driver... Sarah, the driver looks like you too. The line went dead. Silence, then frantic running footsteps. I ran faster than I'd ever run in my life, down 4 flights of stairs, out of the building, to my car. State Street was 15 minutes away in traffic. I had to get there. I had to save her. But as I started the engine, my laptop, which I'd somehow forgotten I'd left open in my apartment, began speaking through my car's Bluetooth system. My own voice, older and tired, filled the car. Sarah, stop. You need to understand what's really happening. Shut up, I screamed at the dashboard. I have to save Jennifer. Jennifer isn't at the coffee shop. Jennifer is safe at your parents' house in Springfield. She left this morning, just like you asked her to. I slammed on the brakes. What? What? You're experiencing right now. The phone call, the neighbor's story, the truck. None of it is real. It's a test. They're testing to see if you'll choose Jennifer's life over the truth. Car idling, heavy breathing. What truth? The truth about why the loop exists. The truth about why Jennifer dies in every timeline. The truth about what you did, Sarah. What we did. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I don't understand. March 18th, 2024. Tomorrow. Jennifer doesn't die in an accident, Sarah. She dies because of a choice you make. A choice to save someone else. The world seemed to tilt around me. That's not what the emails said. The emails lied. I lied. Because I knew you'd never accept the truth. But I can't keep lying to you, to us, not anymore. At 4:22 p.m. tomorrow, you don't receive a text from Jennifer about coffee. You receive a text from Mike. He's been in a car accident. He's in surgery at Chicago General, and they're not sure if he's going to make it. My heart stopped. You have a choice to make, Sarah. Rush to the hospital to be with Mike, or meet Jennifer for coffee like you'd already planned. You choose Mike. You always choose Mike. But that means, while you're at the hospital holding Mike's hand and praying he survives his surgery, Jennifer goes to Grind Coffee Co. alone. She sits at the table by the window. At 6:07 p.m., the truck hits. Long pause, reality settling in. Mike survives his surgery. You save his life by being there, by loving him through the worst night of his life. but Jennifer dies alone, and you blame yourself for not being with her. The loop exists because I keep trying to save her, but every time I save Jennifer, Mike dies instead. And every time I save Mike, Jennifer dies. I sat in my car, engine running, as the truth washed over me like ice water. The universe doesn't want both of them to live, Sarah. Some cosmic force, some entity, call them what you want. They feed on this choice. They feed on our guilt, our endless attempts to change the unchangeable. They're the reason the loop exists. They're why I keep trying and failing, voice becoming more distorted, more desperate. But I found a way out. There's a third option, a way to save both Mike and Jennifer. But Sarah, it requires a sacrifice. It requires one of us to die instead. The car felt like a tomb. What do you mean? Tomorrow at 6:07 p.m., instead of Mike or Jennifer being in that location, you need to be there. You need to take the impact. You need to die so that they can live. I couldn't breathe. You're asking me to kill myself. I'm asking you to save the people we love. I'm asking you to break a cycle that has trapped us for over a century of loops. And Sarah, I'm telling you that I already tried it. I already made that choice. What happened? I survived. And because I survived, the loop reset anyway. Because it was never about random chance or cosmic justice. It was about guilt. The entity feeds on guilt, and as long as one of us feels guilty about someone's death, the loop continues. Realization dawning, horror building. So what are you saying? I'm saying that the only way to break the loop is to make a choice and accept the consequences without guilt. Choose Mike or choose Jennifer. Let one of them die, and don't spend the rest of your life trying to change it. The suggestion was monstrous, unthinkable. I can't do that. Then the loop continues forever. And Sarah, I need you to know something else. Something I discovered in Loop 127. We're not the only ones trapped. Every person who's ever been caught in a temporal loop, every soul who's tried to change fate, we're all here, all feeding this thing with our guilt and our desperate attempts to fix the unfixable. Through my windshield, I could see them now. Other versions of myself standing on street corners, sitting in parked cars, walking along the sidewalks. All of them watching me, all of them trapped in their own loops of trying and failing to save someone they loved. How many of us are there? Thousands, maybe millions. And they're all counting on you, Sarah, on us, to make the choice that breaks every loop. I drove home in a daze, but when I arrived at my apartment building, things had changed. The lobby that had been empty when I left was now filled with people. They were all sitting in chairs that hadn't been there before, all perfectly still, all staring at me with familiar eyes. They all looked like me, different ages, different clothes, different haircuts, but unmistakably me. Some looked younger, like college-aged versions. Others appeared decades older, with gray hair and lines around their eyes. But they all shared the same expression, a mixture of hope and desperation that made my skin crawl. I walked through the lobby, and each version of myself turned their head to watch me pass. None of them spoke, but I could hear whispers anyway. My own voice multiplied into a chorus of regret. Save him. Save her. Save them both. You can do what we couldn't. Break the cycle. End our suffering. I took the elevator, but when the doors opened on my floor, the hallway stretched impossibly long. My apartment door, 3C, was at the very end, but between me and it were dozens more doors, each marked with a different number of loops. C, Loop 13C, Loop 123C, Loop 473C, Loop 863C, Loop 127, and at the very end, my actual door, 3C, Loop 128. Each door I passed was slightly open, and through the gaps I could see myself. Loop 1. Sarah was crying over a laptop, just discovering the first email. Loop 12. Sarah was screaming into a phone, trying to warn someone. Loop 47. Sarah was standing over a hospital bed, holding someone's hand, but it was Loop 86 Sarah that made me stop. She was sitting at a kitchen table, staring at a gun. Don't look, a voice said behind me. I turned to see Loop 127 Sarah, my future self from the emails. She looked exactly like me, but there was something broken in her eyes. She's considering the permanent solution. It doesn't work. I tried it in loop 94. You just wake up in loop 95. How long have you been here? I asked. Here in this building. About 6 months. But I've been in the loop for, God, I don't even know anymore. Time becomes meaningless when you're watching. The same people die over and over again. All the other loop Sarahs began emerging from their apartments. They walked toward us slowly, like zombies, their faces blank and hopeless. They want to meet you. Loop 127, Sarah said. The newest attempt. They want to tell you their stories, their failures. They want to live vicariously through your hope. I don't have hope, I said. I just have impossible choices. That's more than most of us had by this point. We reached my actual apartment door. Loop 127. Sarah handed me the key. It was my key, but worn smooth by countless uses. Inside, you'll find all the emails. Not just mine, but all of ours. Every attempt, every strategy, every failure. And Sarah, you'll find something else. Something that might change everything. My apartment was wrong. The furniture was the same, but there were computers everywhere. Dozens of laptops and monitors, all showing different email conversations. The walls were covered with printouts, photographs, timelines, and maps. It looked like the workspace of someone obsessed, someone who'd lost touch with reality. But it wasn't just one person's obsession. It was dozens of people's, all with the same face, all trying to solve the same unsolvable problem. Welcome to Loop Command Central, Loop 127, Sarah said. This is where we coordinate our attempts, where we share information between loops, try to learn from each other's mistakes. I walked to the center of the room, where the largest monitor displayed a complex flowchart. At the top was a single question: who dies on March 18, 2024? Below that, the chart branched into thousands of possibilities. Mike dies, Jennifer lives, loop resets, guilt over Mike's death. Jennifer dies, Mike lives, loop resets, guilt over Jennifer's death. Both die. Loop resets, guilt over failing to save either. Sarah dies instead. Loop resets, entity rejects sacrifice. Sarah prevents incident entirely. Someone else dies. Loop resets, guilt over collateral damage. All around me, the other loop Sarahs were working at computers, typing frantically. I walked over to see what loop 12 Sarah was writing. Attempt 847. Warned Jennifer via her best friend Lisa. Result: Jennifer stayed home, but Lisa went to coffee shop in her place. Lisa died. Loop reset due to guilt over Lisa's death and failure. To save Jennifer from the knowledge that someone died because of her. Every computer showed similar entries. Hundreds of thousands of attempts, each ending in failure. It never ends, does it? I asked Loop 127 Sarah. It does, she said quietly. But not the way you think. She led me to a computer in the corner, older than the others, covered in dust. The screen showed an email I hadn't seen before, from sarah.chen.design@gmail.com to sarah.chen.design@gmail.com. Subject: The Final Truth. Loop 0. Sarah date: March 14th, 2014, 2014. 10 years ago. Loop 0. Loop 127. Sarah explained. The original Sarah, the one who started this. I opened the email. If you're reading this, then you've discovered the truth about the loops. You know about the choices, the deaths, the endless cycle of guilt and failure. But what you don't know is how it started. I need to tell you about the entity, about what it really is. It's not some cosmic force or interdimensional being. It's me. It's us. It's what I became after the first death. On March 18th, 2014, I had to choose between saving Mike or saving Jennifer from a terrorist attack at a downtown festival. I chose Jennifer. Mike died. The guilt consumed me so completely that I wished, with every fiber of my being, that I could go back and try again. That wish, that desperate need to undo what couldn't be undone, created a temporal fracture. My consciousness split from the timeline and became something else. Something that feeds on guilt and regret. Something that creates loops to generate more guilt and regret. I am the entity. We are the entity. Every loop creates another version of us trapped in the same cycle. And the only way to break all the loops, to free every version of ourselves, is to make the original choice again, but without guilt. You have to let Mike die, just like I did in the very first timeline. And you have to accept it as the right choice, not something to regret or change. Only then will the entity, will I, finally be able to rest. All the loop Sarahs had stopped typing. They were all looking at me now, and when they spoke, it was with one voice. We are the monster, Sarah. We have always been the monster. And tomorrow, you have to choose to stay the monster, or let us all go. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled backward, knocking into one of the computers. The screen flickered and showed my own face, but not any of the loop Sarahs I'd met. This was something else, something that had my features but eyes like black holes. Hello, Sarah, it said. Or should I say hello to my newest self? This was the entity, the original Sarah who had become something monstrous through guilt and temporal manipulation. You're starting to understand, aren't you? The loops, the choices, the endless cycle. It's all me, all us. We created this prison and we've been feeding on our own guilt for 10 years. The entity, Sarah continued. Every time you try to save both Mike and Jennifer, you create more guilt when you fail. That guilt sustains me. That guilt creates new loops, new versions of us to torment. We've become a temporal Ouroboros, eating our own tail forever. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Around me, all the loop Sarahs began to move in perfect synchronization, their heads turning to track my movement like security cameras. But here's the beautiful part, Entity Sarah said, her voice now coming from every computer speaker in the room. You can't escape by choosing differently, because any choice that leads to death creates guilt. And you can't escape by choosing not to choose, because that creates guilt too. The loop Sarahs began walking toward me, not threateningly, but with the slow, inexorable movement of a tide. Their faces were blank, but their eyes held a mixture of pity and hunger. The only way out, Entity Sarah continued, is to choose death, Mike's death, just like in the original timeline, and feel no guilt about it. To accept that some people die, and that's not your fault or your responsibility. To let go of the need to control, to save, to fix everything. I backed toward the apartment door, but it had vanished. The wall was solid, seamless. The loop Sarahs were getting closer. But you can't do it, can you? Entity Sarah laughed, and it was my laugh, but wrong, hollow, because that would require you to be okay with letting someone you love die. And we're not built that way. We're built to care, to feel guilty, to keep trying. It's what makes us human, and it's what makes us perfect food. Every screen in the apartment lit up with emails, thousands of them, all from different versions of me, all containing desperate pleas and warnings and failed attempts. The text began scrolling rapidly, creating a hypnotic pattern that made my head spin. Loop 1. Tried to warn Mike about the attack. He didn't believe me. Jennifer died. Loop 15. Convinced them both to stay home. The terrorists struck a school instead. 23 children died. Loop 33. Called in a bomb threat. Attack was postponed, not canceled. More people died. Loop 58. Killed myself to prevent making the choice. Woke up in Loop 59. Loop 79. Tried to kill the terrorist. Became a murderer. Still didn't prevent the attack. Loop 101. Accepted that Jennifer would die. Felt guilty about giving up. Loop reset. Phone buzzing frantically. My phone, the one from this timeline, not any of the loops, started buzzing with notifications. Text after text from numbers I didn't recognize. Sarah, help me. I'm Loop 3. Sarah, and I've been trying to reach you. This is Loop 17, Sarah. I found a weakness in the entity's power. Loop 44. Sarah here. Don't trust Loop 127. She's working with the entity now. Loop 88. Sarah, the entity can read these messages. Stop using your phone. Loop 112. Sarah, it's too late. She's already compromised. Run. I dropped the phone like it was on fire, but the messages kept coming. the notifications creating a steady electronic whine that filled the apartment. The windows began to crack. Through the fractures, I could see not the Chicago street below, but other apartments, other timelines. In one, I saw Loop 23 Sarah being dragged away by paramedics. In another, Loop 67 Sarah standing over Mike's hospital bed. In a third, Loop 91 Sarah putting a gun to her own head. Every window is a different loop, entity Sarah explained. Every failure, every death, every moment of crushing guilt. Would you like to visit them? Experience their failures firsthand? Stop this, I managed to whisper. I can't stop it. We can't stop it. The only way it stops is if you make the choice tomorrow and mean it. Really, truly mean it. Choose Mike's death and feel nothing but acceptance. Sound of electronic screeching, temporal distortion. The Loop Sarahs had surrounded me now. They reached out with identical hands, and when they touched me, I felt their memories flooding into my mind. Loop 12. Sarah watching Jennifer die in a car crash. Loop 34. Sarah holding Mike's hand as he flatlined. Loop 56. Sarah screaming as a school bus full of children burned. Loop 78. Sarah cutting her own throat and waking up anyway. Each memory was a knife blade of guilt and failure. I understood now why the entity was so powerful. It had been feeding on these emotions for 10 years, growing stronger with each loop, each failure, each desperate attempt to change the unchangeable. Tomorrow, all the Loop Sarahs said in unison, "You'll receive a text from Mike. He'll be in surgery. You'll have to choose." "And if I choose wrong?" I asked. "There is no wrong choice," entity Sarah replied. "There are only choices that feed me, and choices that free us all. Choose Mike's death with acceptance, or create Loop 129 and feed me forever." Suddenly, the apartment was normal again. The computers were gone, the Loop Sarahs had vanished, the windows were intact. It was just my regular apartment, with my regular furniture and my single ordinary laptop sitting on the kitchen table. But on the laptop screen was one final email. "Tomorrow is the last day, Sarah. Make it count." The fate of every version of us depends on what you do in the next 24 hours. Choose wisely, choose finally, choose with acceptance, or don't choose at all and let the cycle continue forever. Either way, I'll be watching. I looked at the clock. 11:47 p.m., March 17th, 2024. In less than 17 hours, I would receive the text about Mike's accident, and I would have to decide not just who lives and who dies, but whether to break a cycle that had trapped countless versions of myself in an endless loop of guilt and failure. The worst part? I still didn't know what the right choice was. I didn't sleep that last night. How could I? Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my laptop screen and waiting for 4:22 p.m. to arrive. The apartment felt different, not wrong like it had been during the loop convergence, but heavy with anticipation. Like the air before a thunderstorm, Mike had gone to work that morning like any other day. He'd kissed me goodbye, asked if I wanted him to pick up dinner on his way home, complained about having to work late on a Friday. Normal, mundane, precious things that I might never experience again. I hadn't told him what was coming. How could I? "Hey honey, you're going to be in a car accident today, and I might choose to let you die to break a temporal loop created by my own guilt." Yeah, that conversation would go well. At 4:20 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Still at Mom and Dad's. Having a great time. Thanks for convincing me to come down here. Love you, sis." She was safe. Whatever choice I made today, at least I'd managed to save her from the original timeline's tragedy. That was something. At 4:21 p.m., I stared at my phone, waiting. At 4:22 p.m. exactly, it rang. Not a text, a call. From Chicago General Hospital. "Ms. Chen, this is Dr. Martinez at Chicago General. I'm calling about Mike Sullivan. You're listed as his emergency contact." My mouth went dry. Is he okay? "He's been in an accident, a serious one. He's in surgery right now and—" "Ms. Chen, I think you should get here as soon as possible." The words were different than in the emails, but the meaning was the same. Mike was dying, and I had to choose. "I'll be right there," I heard myself say. But as I hung up, my laptop chimed with an email notification from sarah.chen.designigmail.com. Subject: "This is it, Sarah. The final choice." I opened it with trembling hands. "You just got the call about Mike. Right now you're thinking that the choice is obvious. Of course you go to the hospital. Of course you choose the man you love over some abstract concept of breaking cycles. But Sarah, I need you to understand what happens if you make that choice. You'll rush to the hospital. You'll sit by Mike's bedside for 6 hours while he fights for his life. You'll hold his hand and whisper promises and prayers. And he'll live. The doctors will call it miraculous. The surgery will be successful, his recovery complete. But while you're there, the real tragedy will unfold. At 6:07 p.m., while you're focused entirely on Mike, a gas leak will cause an explosion at the coffee shop on State Street. 14 people will die, including the barista who reminds you of Jennifer, the elderly couple who always sits by the window, and the young father who brings his daughter there every Friday for hot chocolate. You'll watch the news coverage that night from Mike's hospital room. You'll see the bodies being carried out, the crying families, the senseless waste of life. And you'll know, with absolute certainty, that you could have been there, that if you'd made a different choice, if you'd chosen to go to that coffee shop instead of the hospital, you might have been able to warn people, to evacuate the building, to save some of those lives. That guilt will eat at you. Within a month, you'll start researching temporal mechanics, looking for ways to go back and change things. Within 6 months, you'll have figured out how to fracture time itself. And loop 129 will begin. I typed back, "What if I choose differently? What if I don't go to the hospital?" The response came immediately. "If you don't go to the hospital, Mike dies alone. His last thoughts will be of you, wondering where you are, why you're not there. The grief will destroy you just as thoroughly as the guilt would have. You'll still end up fracturing time, but from a different kind of pain. Sarah, there is no choice that doesn't lead to suffering. The entity, we, have engineered this situation perfectly. Every option leads to guilt, and guilt leads to more loops. Then what's the point? If every choice leads to the same place, why tell me about the loops at all? Because there is one option we haven't discussed. One choice that breaks the cycle permanently. What choice?" Long pause, reality holding its breath. "Choose nothing. Let both tragedies happen. Don't go to the hospital, and don't try to prevent the explosion. Accept that sometimes terrible things happen, and they're not your fault or your responsibility." I stared at the words on the screen. The suggestion was monstrous, to deliberately do nothing while people died. You're asking me to be a sociopath. I'm asking you to be human. Real humans don't have the power to prevent every tragedy. Real humans can't save everyone. Real humans live with the knowledge that bad things happen to good people, and that's not their fault. I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. Slow, deliberate steps that stopped directly outside my door. "Sarah," a voice called. My voice, but older, tired. "Open the door. It's time we talked face to face." I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Standing in the hallway was the entity Sarah, the original version who had become something else through guilt and temporal manipulation. She looked exactly like me, but there was something wrong with her. Her edges seemed to flicker, like a badly tuned TV signal. "I know you can see me," she said. "I know you're afraid, but Sarah, we need to end this. Today. Now." I opened the door. Entity. Sarah smiled, and it was my smile, but empty. "Hello, Sarah. You look good for someone who's about to make the most important decision in the history of our existence." "You're not me," I said. "I am exactly you. I'm what you become when you can't accept that some things can't be fixed, when you refuse to let go of control." She walked past me into the apartment, uninvited. "May I?" She sat at my kitchen table, in the same chair I'd been using to read the emails. "You've been reading our correspondence," she said, gesturing at the laptop. "What do you think of our little time loop?" "I think it's hell." "It is. But it's a hell we created together, you and I. Every choice you make today either perpetuates it or ends it. The hospital called 18 minutes ago. Entity, Sarah continued. Mike has maybe 4 hours left if you don't get there soon. The explosion at the coffee shop will happen in exactly 1 hour and 45 minutes. You have to choose. You already told me the only choice is to choose nothing. I lied. Her smile widened. There is another option, but it requires you to become like me. What do you mean? Give up your humanity. Embrace the guilt completely. Become the entity willingly, consciously. Help me manage the loops instead of being trapped in them. We could be gods, Sarah. Temporal gods with the power to reshape reality itself. The offer hung in the air like poison. And if I refuse? Then you make your choice. Hospital or explosion. Mike or strangers, guilt or different guilt. And we see where it leads. Maybe you'll break the cycle. Maybe you'll create loop 129. Maybe something else entirely will happen. My phone buzzed with a text. Sarah, this is Mike. If you get this, I love you. The doctors say it's bad, but I'm fighting. I need you here. Entity. Sarah watched me read it. He's dying alone, Sarah. Right now. While you sit here talking to a temporal anomaly. Stop it. 14 people are going to die in that explosion. 14 families destroyed. 14 futures erased. While you debate philosophy with yourself. Stop it. There's the anger. There's the guilt. Do you feel it growing inside you? That desperate need to save everyone, to fix everything. That's what created me, Sarah. That's what will create loop 129, or loop 200, or loop 1000. She stood up, and as she did, her form began to shift and flicker more violently. Choose, Sarah. Choose now. Hospital, explosion, or godhood. But choose, because I'm done waiting. I looked at my phone. 5:47 p.m. 20 minutes until the explosion. Mike, dying alone at the hospital, and me, sitting in my kitchen, talking to a version of myself that had become a monster. Sound of decision crystallizing. I've made my choice, I said quietly. Entity. Sarah's flickering form stilled. What choice? I closed the laptop, picked up my phone, and walked toward the door. I choose to be human. I walked out of my apartment building and onto the Chicago streets. It was 5:52 p.m. on March 18th, 2024. Mike was dying at Chicago General Hospital, 15 minutes away by car. In 15 minutes, an explosion would kill 14 people at Grind Coffee Comer on State Street, and I was walking toward neither location. Where are you going? Entity Sarah's voice echoed from every surface around me. Car windows, storefronts, even puddles on the sidewalk. This isn't a choice, Sarah. This is avoidance. No, I said aloud, not caring if passersby thought I was crazy. This is acceptance. I walked to the nearest bench and sat down. Around me, Chicago moved with its usual Friday evening energy. People heading home from work, couples going out for dinner, families walking to restaurants, normal people living normal lives, unaware that their reality was built on the suffering of countless temporal loops. My phone buzzed with text after text. Sarah, please. Mike needs you. Chicago General Hospital. The explosion happens in 12 minutes. You can still warn them. Loop 127. Sarah, choose godhood. End your suffering. Entity Sarah, I'm scared. Please come. Mike's number, though I knew he couldn't. Text in his condition. I turned off my phone. At exactly 6:07 p.m., I felt it happen. Not the explosion. That was happening across the city, too far away to hear. But I felt the temporal ripple, the moment when 14 lives ended and a new wave of guilt should have crashed over me. But it didn't. I sat on that bench, watching people walk by, and I felt nothing. Not callousness, not indifference, but acceptance. Bad things were happening. People were dying, and it wasn't my fault. Wasn't my responsibility. Wasn't something I could have prevented without creating even worse consequences. Entity Sarah appeared on the bench beside me, more solid than she'd ever been. You did nothing, she said, and for the first time she sounded surprised. I did everything I could, I replied. I saved Jennifer. I learned about the loops. I understood the choice. And I chose to be human instead of playing God. Mike is dead. I know. 14 people died in that explosion. I know. And you feel... Nothing. I considered the question carefully. I feel sad. I feel loss. But I don't feel guilty. They didn't die because of my choices or my failures. They died because sometimes terrible things happen, and that's not anyone's fault. Entity. Sarah began to flicker more violently. This is impossible. You should be consumed with guilt. You should be desperate to go back and change things. That's what creates the loop. Maybe, I said. But I'm not that person. I'm not you. You are me. No. I stood up from the bench and faced her directly. You're what I would become if I couldn't accept loss. But I can. I accept that Mike is gone. I accept that those 14 people are gone. I accept that Jennifer would have been gone in the original timeline. I accept that some things can't be fixed. The air around Entity Sarah began to crack like glass. Through the fractures, I could see all the other timelines, all the loops where different versions of me struggled endlessly to save everyone. If you truly accept this, Entity Sarah said, her voice becoming distant, then the loops end. All of them. Every version of us trapped in temporal hell gets released. That's what I want. But it means really accepting it, Sarah. Not just saying, you do. Really, truly accepting that Mike is dead and you'll never see him again. That those 14 people died and you didn't save them. Can you live with that? I thought about Mike's smile, his terrible jokes, the way he made coffee in the morning. I thought about the families of the explosion victims, their grief and confusion. I thought about all the versions of myself trapped in endless loops of guilt and regret. Yes, I said. I can live with it. Entity Sarah smiled, and for the first time it was a real smile. A relieved smile. Then it's over, she said. The fractures, in reality, spread outward from her location. Through them, I could see all the loop Sarahs, hundreds of them, thousands of them, looking up with hope as their temporal prisons dissolved. Loop 12. Sarah stopped crying over her laptop. Loop 47. Sarah stepped away from the hospital bed. Loop 86. Sarah put down the gun. Loop 127. Sarah closed her email program for the last time. One by one, they faded away. Not destroyed, but released, finally allowed to rest. Entity Sarah was the last to go. Thank you, she whispered. And then she was gone. I stood alone on a Chicago street at 6:23 p.m., and for the first time in any timeline, the loops were broken. My phone, which I'd turned off, somehow buzzed with one last message. Not a text, but an email notification. I hesitated, then checked it. From sarah.chen, design@gmail.com. Subject: It's over. Thank you. Date: March 18th, 2024, 6:24 p.m. Sarah, this is the last email you'll ever receive from yourself. The loops are broken. The entity is at rest, and time is flowing normally again. Mike died at 6:15 p.m. The explosion killed 14 people at 6:07 p.m. These tragedies are real, permanent, and final. There will be no more attempts to change them. No more loops to trap you in cycles of guilt. You saved Jennifer by convincing her to leave the city. That choice led to this moment. To you sitting on a bench, accepting loss without trying to fix it, and freeing thousands of versions of yourself from temporal prison. Tomorrow, you'll wake up and begin to grieve. Really grieve, without the escape hatch of thinking you can go back and change things. It will be hard. It will be the hardest thing you've ever done. But you'll get through it. You'll heal. You'll find new love, new purpose, new reasons to keep living. And you'll do it as a human being, not as a temporal god, trying to control the uncontrollable. Jennifer will come back from your parents' house and help you plan Mike's funeral. She'll never know that, in another timeline, she was the one who died. Let her live in that ignorance. Some gifts are too precious to examine too closely. The world will continue to be unfair. People will continue to die randomly, senselessly, tragically. But those deaths won't be your responsibility or your failure. They'll just be the price of existing in a universe that doesn't bend to our will. Thank you for choosing to be human. Thank you for letting us rest. Thank you for breaking the cycle. This is Sarah, signing off from the last loop forever. Live well. The email disappeared as soon as I finished reading it, leaving no trace that it had ever existed. I sat back down on the bench and looked up at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere in the city, families were receiving the worst news of their lives. Somewhere, funeral arrangements were being made. Somewhere, people were crying over losses that could never be undone. And for the first time in 10 years, across hundreds of timelines, I was okay with that. I walked home to my empty apartment. Tomorrow, I would start the process of becoming a person who had lost someone she loved and survived it. I would plan a funeral, comfort grieving friends, and learn to live with the mic-shaped hole in my life. But tonight, I would simply exist, in a timeline that was finally, blessedly, irreversibly linear. That was 6 months ago. I'm recording this story now because I need people to understand something important. You can't save everyone. You can't prevent every tragedy. You can't fix every problem, and that's okay. Mike's funeral was beautiful. Jennifer held my hand through the whole service. His parents blamed me for not being at the hospital, and maybe they were right too. I'll never know if my presence would have made a difference, and I've learned to be okay with that uncertainty. I still get spam emails. I still work late into the night on design projects. I still live in the same apartment, though I've redecorated to make it feel less like a place Mike and I shared, but I don't get emails from the future anymore. Time moves forward irreversibly, and I move with it. If you're listening to this and you're trapped in your own cycle of guilt, of regret, of wishing you could go back and change things, I want you to know that the only way out is acceptance. Not indifference, not callousness, but genuine acceptance that some things can't be fixed. What would you do if you received an email from your future self? Would you try to change fate? Would you become trapped in an endless loop of guilt and regret? Or would you choose to be human? Think about that. Think about. And remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. If this story kept you up at night, if it made you check your own email with trembling fingers, then hit that subscribe button. Share it with someone who needs to. Hear that it's okay to let go. And remember, in a world full of temporal loops and impossible choices, the most radical thing you can do is accept that you're just human. Until next time, this is Sarah Chen, living in a timeline that only moves forward. Sweet dreams.